pivoting a little bit, so talking about the future here, could you tell us a little bit about the 1803 fund and then also how that will impact the SEI community network as well as, just the Black community at large in Portland?
So let me just start by making sure, because I always start this way on the 1803 fund because I don't want us to mess up history. So from a historical standpoint, myself and Ronnie Herndon have had a long-term relationship with Phil Knight. After the George Floyd issue, I got a call from Phil Knight after trying to get back to Phil Knight for 15 years in a conversation. Couldn't get the meeting. He had already given us $5 million, by the way, prior to that. But after the George Floyd issue happened, Phil Knight called me because he wanted us to know about what Nike was getting ready to do, because Nike was going to drop like $140 million, $40 million from Nike, $100 million from God, how can I just forget his name? Michael Jordan. So I can forget that name.
Kind of good basketball.
So, and he wanted to introduce me to John Donahoe, who was the new CEO. So, I mean, I'm a little giddy at this point. I've been trying to get back to Phil for 15 years, and I answer my phone as Phil Knight. So in that conversation about learning about that, I made the ask to Phil to say, would you and Penny, his wife, consider doing something more than what Nike is doing? Because Phil could do this individually. And he said, send me something. So I made the ask of Phil Knight for $500 million. He said, bring me something. I called Ronnie Herndon, who also had a relationship with Phil Knight. And then I called Rakiah Adams, who is an SEI kid, who has the history of handling hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars. Because I felt like, Phil, for us to get money like that, somebody needs to be involved who knows how to handle money on that level. So I called Rakiah. So over 3 years after that ask, he dropped the money and we developed 1803. Now, I'll be honest, 1803 is going to do great work. They're going to give out a lot of money, but it wasn't my concept or Ronnie's concept to do it the way in which it's being done. That's the CEO's concept. That's Rakiah. And, she's the CEO, so she gets to do it the way that she wants to do it. I felt like when you get that kind of money, we didn't end up with $500 million. We ended up with $400 million. I wanted to be able to doing something that was straight up transformational, go all in on an issue or two and make the difference, not a difference, make the difference. The way that it's being handled, I think it'll ultimately end up being more like a foundation that gives out money. There's several entities that's gotten money already. To me, that's not game changing. That might help sustain some people, and we'll be able to say, well, that made a difference there, made a difference there. But then when you look at the data at the end, ain't nothing going to change. So I would have done it differently, but I appreciate her leadership and the way she's chosen to do it. And hopefully she can keep raising money and making money over time. So at least those resources will continue to be there. Now, we're hoping that on the education side that we'll have a little bit more say over what that piece does eventually do. And the concept that I just talked about earlier, having the highest graduation rate in the nation for Black students in Oregon would be, to me, that would be making the difference. That's a kind of a transformational thing that I would say we would hope eventually we could do something like that out of the resources of 1803.
Or maybe I've misheard you. Investing in the graduation rate, would that be the only game changing? Because you talked about sustainability, and I think sustainability is like super important. Like, what differences would you have wanted rather than just giving out? Like, what would have been the most sustainable thing for us as we move forward?
Well, to me, I'm going to always believe that education is the key for our kids in one form or another. I mean, at least getting them to graduate from high school.
Yeah.
And then after high school, either college or workforce development, something.
Trade.
Trade. And I feel like if we looked at all of the Black kids in Portland Metro, because that number, comes down, I think it would be transformational just to what we do in SCI, we talk about creating positive contributing citizens. So that would be the first part.
Yeah.
The second part that I think would be transformational, because I would say 70 to 80% of the Black kids that we deal with going home to a single female head of household. So you would pump resources into that mother to make sure that she could handle her world, so that, as we talked about earlier, at-risk kids going home to at-risk adult, we need to make sure that she ain't at risk, or she's less at risk, so that she can provide a support system for her son or daughter. If you do that and we do education, I guarantee you over 20 years from now, our community would be different. It would be different. And that to me is transformational. But you have to pump it all in that. You can't do 10 things. See, and we got 25 problems and we're trying to solve all 25. And that's not the way you get it done. You solve them one at a time. You go all in until we solve that one. Then you go all in on the next one and you solve that one. But if you just doling out to a little bit to everybody, that's how all of us have been getting money for SCI for 43 years. That's how we've been getting money. And it's never enough to make the problem go away.
I appreciate you expanding upon that, because I kind of like felt that. Now, I also want to pivot just a little bit too.